So some of you might be aware of the fact that Metroidvanias are not my favorite games. They're games I want to like. There's so many of them that I would really love to get into, but there's just a few barriers that won't allow me to fully enjoy them. Games like Metroid, Castlevania, or even Hollow Knight are games that I want to be into, but there's just a few issues I have with them that really make it difficult for me to enjoy. One of them is navigation. The other one is difficulty. In these style of games, I either find myself getting pointlessly lost or getting my butt kicked by a boss who I feel has a crazy difficulty spike. So when I saw that Gunbrella was going to be a Metroidvania, I had my reservations, but I do love Devolver Digital and I know they produce great games, and I've been playing a ton of Gunbrella, so let's talk about how it compares to other Metroidvanias and if this is a game that I fully enjoy. But before we get into that, I have to ask you guys to please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps the channel out and doesn't cost you anything. Then remember, there's a chance that you could win a free Tesla. I mean, not from me, but you know, anything's possible. Anyway, let's get into Gunbrella. So for me, it starts off in a really good place as there is a really good story attached to this game. I'm not saying all Metroidvanias do or don't have good stories. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying when they do, it just gives you more motivation. And this one, it's got a little bit of something for everyone. As we jump into the skin of our main character, Murray, we find a very grisly scene where his wife has been murdered, and the only thing that remains is a weapon he's really unfamiliar with. He learns quickly that it's called a Gunbrella, and with this weapon being his only lead on the murderer who killed his wife, he takes his newfound weapon and begins to ask around, who's seen this thing, who knows anything about it? Almost everyone tells him he needs to go to Allendale because there's somebody called the Tinkerer there who most likely made the weapon and can give you a lot of information. Although the main form of transportation in this game is by train, and unfortunately, the furthest he can get is Orwell. And as soon as we arrive in Orwell, we find out that this little town is having its own crisis, as there's been a number of cult members who've shown up in their town abducting people and using them for blood sacrifices so they can summon some big evil demon. And it seems that the only way we're going to get any answers about our wife's murder is to handle this problem first, which in itself begins to unravel a whole other story. Armed with our mighty Gunbrella, we head in there to handle the situation. With only the thoughts of revenge and possibly finding our lost infant daughter, we go to cleanse this area of these cult members. And before we know it, we're tied up in a story with hellish demons, a truly disturbing cult, a militaristic group that is literally kidnapping children, all while trying to find the murderer of our wife and hopefully find our infant daughter. And one of the things that I really appreciate with the story is that none of it feels forced or overly complex. It really does flow in itself. You never really get lost on what your motivation is or what you're trying to accomplish. It all is pretty much laid out before you in such a manner where it makes sense. I know it seems like there's a ton of different elements to the game, but they all come together to blend really well and to make a very cohesive story. Now, for me, aside from the actual story, a lot of the decision making and side quests are also something to pay attention to, because not only are they non-repetitive and unique in their own way, they are also a way to earn hearts, which I think is pretty cool in that Zelda type way where you can permanently upgrade your health. Now, you only need to collect 2 to permanently upgrade your health by 1 heart, so that also makes it a little bit easier. But a lot of the side quests and decisions that you make that allow you to get these hearts actually reward you for being a good person, which I think is a really cool idea. And yes, you can decide. You can make different decisions. You can say different things to different people, and this will actually determine if you are rewarded with these hearts. So I do think that's a really cool aspect of the game, as a lot of these Metroidvanias don't really have decision making, and I was really glad to see that being a component in this game. Now, obviously, the main attraction for a lot of people is the combat. As it should, because the Gunbrella is actually a very unique and cool weapon. Not only is it basically a shotgun with an umbrella, but the umbrella is not just for looks. In fact, aside from being able to dash with it and almost vertically fly for a little bit of time, it's also a shield and can actually reflect projectiles. And this allows for a lot of different combat styles. You can jettison yourself around the screen like you have a jetpack attached to you while you're raining shotgun shells down at your enemies. Or you can play the game really defensive and really focus in on just reflecting damage and playing a slower style. And you can also get different ammo for your Gunbrella. which completely changes how you're going to engage in combat. As I said before, the default is a shotgun, so you have a lot of spread, but not a lot of reach out and touch you kind of power. But you can get rifle ammo, which allows for you to be able to hit enemies across the screen, but you don't have that spread, so you have to be very accurate. There's also saw blades, which kind of bounce around the entire environment, as well as other ammo that kind of works like an upgrade, although all the ammo you pretty much have to buy and doesn't seem to last as long as where the shotgun shells are infinite and you can use them as much as you want on whatever you want. I spent a lot of times just shooting at crates and stuff and not worried about running out of ammo, so that was nice. Although there are also permanent upgrades that you can make to your Gunbrella, and this happens once you actually reach the Tinker, and you will collect these gears and cogs, and you're not really sure what to do with them, but once you get to him, which is relatively early in the game, you can then exchange these parts for more attack power or faster reloading speed. And for me, the gameplay was buttery smooth. I really appreciated just how tight the controls were and how quickly your character responds. In fact, the performance of the entire game is really smooth and really handles like a dream. In all my time of playing, I never really experienced any lag or glitches or forced shutdowns. Everything ran like a well-oiled machine, and it's complemented by incredibly detailed pixel art, which I think adds more to the game than just detailed characters and beautiful environments. You see, because the game is also sort of like a thriller. I wouldn't call it a horror game, but with enough of these like Lovecraftian creatures and demonic wraiths flying around, it really does have almost this thriller suspense feeling about it. And the well-detailed pixel art just really adds to that. I don't want to say horror aspect again, because I can't say that I was ever like scared, but you do fight a lot of really interesting looking creatures. Bosses can range from like a gigantic mutant rat to this thing that the cultists call their baby, which is basically a eyeball with legs that shoots plasma-ish projectiles at you. And with all these components really coming together in this really cohesive manner, of course the sound is going to be the same. The music in the right times just feels creepy and odd, and in other times almost gives you a little bit of relaxation or this feeling that you're safe for now. Like sometimes when you head into the taverns or whenever you're meeting with different characters, it'll lighten up just enough so you're not on edge as much. But it really just complements what this game is, and I think that in itself was a very difficult task because there are so many layers to this game. When you first start playing it, or if you watch the trailer, you don't really get the sense of it being creepy and having this Lovecraftian aspect about it, but it definitely does, and all of that, like I said, is just very cohesive the way it works together. So the two biggest things that I had a problem with in a lot of other Metroidvanias are, like I said, difficulty, and namely random difficulty spikes. So I want to be clear on that, and also navigation, getting lost. I don't know how many times in like Hollow Knight I would just simply get lost, and if I'm being honest, that is the most frustrating aspect of any game to me, is getting lost and not knowing where to go. I understand that that kind of takes away from the exploration, but there's a difference between exploration and just walking around pointlessly trying to find out where to go next. And I'd like to report with this game, neither thing were an issue. In fact, I would say the combat is incredibly fair, but even if that's an issue for you, you can actually just change the difficulty to easy and you'll have a much better go of it. And all of the maps are essentially linear. You could probably get lost if you tried really hard, but you'd have to really try, because let me tell you, I get lost all the time in these type of games, and I never had that problem with this. There were definitely areas that I had spent more time trying to gain access to, but never did I actually feel lost or not know where to go. So for me, those two things are huge. And I was incredibly happy to see that they are not an issue in this game. And lastly, we look at value. I can't believe that this game is only $15, if I'm being honest. There's a lot of content in the game. It looks great. It runs awesome. It's kind of hard to believe that a Devolver Digital game, and a game with that kind of prestige about it, is only $15. It's definitely well worth the value, and I've really enjoyed my time with it. So if I was going to give it a number score, I would give this game a 9 out of 10. And yeah, that speaks volumes for me, because Metroidvanias usually struggle for me to get a really good score, but this one, it hit different. It's not what I would call a typical Metroidvania. It's got a lot of elements of like RPGs and even a little bit of, like I said, a horror aspect of it as well. Ultimately, I'm really into this game, really been enjoying it. One of those games that kind of took me by surprise, sort of like Sea of Stars. I knew I was going to like the games, but I didn't realize how much I was going to like these games. But that leads me to my final question. What do you guys think about Gunbrella? Have you checked it out? Are you excited for it? Is it a game that you're kind of waiting for it to go on sale? Or is it a game that you really just don't have any sort of interest in at all? I truly value your opinions and your thoughts, so please let me know in the comment section down below. I love each and every one of y'all. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.